We talk about RV travel in North America a lot, but what about the rest of the world? Today, we talk to our good friends Heath and Alyssa Padgett about traveling to France and England and New Zealand and Japan, renting RVs all around the world. This is RV Miles. Welcome to episode number 236 of RV Miles. I'm Jason, and I'm coming to you from Charlottesville, Virginia. Some changes in our travels. You notice Abby is not with me again this week. We were supposed to all hit the road together last Friday and head here to Charlottesville. Our oldest son, Jack, is in a film camp that began on Monday of this week. And the goal was that we would all travel here and stay here at the Charlottesville KOA here for 2 weeks and spend the time getting to know Charlottesville, getting to go to Monticello, getting to go to Shenandoah National Park and more. We made some changes to our plans. Abby, as you know, lost her dear friend Beck, and she has decided to take on some of the planning of a sort of celebration party memorial for Beck, which is happening this upcoming weekend. So what we decided to do, the original thought was that Abby would just drive from here back to Kansas City where the event is happening, and then come back here. Well, that would require about 7 days out of 10 in a vehicle for Abby. And it just didn't make any sense. So what we did instead was we separated. So Jack and I came here to Charlottesville. We took about 3 days to travel here. Not about 3 days. We took exactly 3 days to travel here. It's about 900 miles. So we did about 300 miles, just a little bit under each day. And Abby, Ethan, and Henry drove to Kansas City on Sunday in our car. They will leave our car in Kansas City after the memorial, and they will drive here in a rental car, which is not cheap, 1,000 miles. Those one-way rentals are quite pricey, but it still was a better option than taking our car here and having our car with us wherever we go, having two vehicles. So we will, after our 6 weeks of travel are up, we will make our way back through Kansas City in order to grab our car and take it home. But it's been it was a quick decision to make some changes. We got it done, and we were apart. Abby and I have not been apart this long since we started dating, I don't think. I really don't think we've been apart this, and the kids certainly have not been apart for a full 2 weeks. Well, apart from them for 10 days. So that's rare for us. It's a new thing, and it's hot here in Virginia. It's hot in Kansas City too. But it's been very pleasant. The air conditioner's been keeping up and everything. Jack and I have been having a good time. Jack, this film camp he is going to was with some friends that he's met online over our years of full-time traveling. And he's met one or two of them in person before, but they all decided to take this camp together. So this is a really great time for him to be able to go to one of his friends' houses who lives close and have dinners, and he's staying the night a few nights, and it's just a really great experience for him, and he's getting to hang out and be a 16-year-old, which is great to see him be able to do. So that's where we're at for our travels right now. Of course, there's a big heat wave going on across the country. I hope you're all staying safe. I hope your air conditioners are keeping up. I hope you haven't been affected too much if you were in the center of the country by the remnants of the hurricane. I know a lot of people are still without power in Texas. Obviously, a heat wave is a terrible time to be without power. So, watch your electrical systems in your RV. This is a time when lots of people are using the air conditioners in the campground, when the voltage in the campground can drop, and that can cause damage. That can cause long-term. Your air conditioner might not stop working, but it can cause long-term damage to the motor in your air conditioner if it's run out of low voltage for a long time. That's why we recommend a power watchdog or a similar type of smart surge protector that accounts for the voltage and shuts off. I'm going to talk about a new update from Power Watchdog in my fresh tank later on in the show. But now we're going to get to the meat of this episode, which is a fairly lengthy interview I did with our friends Heath and Alyssa Padgett. They're great people. They've traveled the world extensively with kids, and they have a heck of a lot to say about how you can get started going to other countries and renting an RV. And they have like a whole list of like 60 countries that you can rent an RV in. So we'll jump right into that in a second. But first, chances are you've seen them on the road. That's because Blue Ox designs and manufactures the best towing products in the industry. Just look around. You'll find them on highways and campgrounds and anywhere you find people traveling in the great outdoors. From award-winning tow bars and base plates to a full line of weight-distributing hitches, adjustable ball mounts, and now they have fifth-wheel hitches too. With Blue Ox, towing doesn't have to be a drag. Visit blueox.com for more information. Harvest Hosts is a membership that allows RVers to take a rest from the road and enjoy unlimited overnight stays at over 5,100 unique stops in North America, such as breweries, wineries, farms, attractions, and more. Easily plan and book your next RV trip and enjoy over $1,500 in exclusive member benefits by joining harvesthost.com. Get 15% off your first year of membership with the code MILES, that's MILES. Go to harvesthost.com to become a Harvest Host member today.
So often when we think about RVing, I think a lot of our minds are focused on the United States and perhaps a bit of Canada, maybe even Mexico, but generally centered around North America a bit. But our good friends Heath and Alyssa Padgett have exploded on that idea and have traveled all around the world in an RV, I think a dozen countries, 4 continents, and have found many different ways to enjoy the RV lifestyle all around the world. Heath and Alyssa, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jason. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks for coming back. It's great to see your faces again. It's been way too long. We certainly miss you guys. You were quite an inspiration for us early on because, you guys started off, I think, traveling all 50 states, and that was sort of the impetus for your RV lifestyle and figuring out how to work on the road wherever you went. So talk to me, for those that don't know the backstory, give us the backstory about how y'all got into RVing in the first place.
You could give the backstory, but it was funny because I was listening to you talking in my mind. I was like, maybe if we hadn't burned through all 50 states in a single year, we're in such a rush to get it done that we had to go travel internationally because we burned through it all already. A good strategy is probably spacing it out anyway, but you can give the backstory.
Well, we wanted to go to all 50 states. Mm-hmm. We were engaged, we were getting married, and we really wanted to be the type of people who started our marriage with action. And so we looked at our collective bucket lists that we had made for ourselves in college, and go to all 50 states was on both of ours. So we said, there we go, that's the one. And Heath just kind of figured out through some internet searching that RVing was going to be the most economical way to do it. And so we kind of dove in, knowing absolutely nothing about RV life, having never really camped before. We actually just camped for the first time this past week.
This is our second time.
Yeah, but the first time we didn't even have to set up the tent because someone else did it for us. So this was the first real time. But we just kind of dove into RV life when that was mostly just retirees who were RVing at the time, and instantly fell in love and kind of ended up full-time traveling for a very long time after that.
This is our map.
Oh gosh, now he's gone. He loves visual aids.
This was our honeymoon road trip that got us started.
Well, and so you, throughout this process, you also made RVing a career. You got it. Don't even want to begin talking about all the different things that you've done, but you've developed campground software. You've wrote books. You hosted a podcast for a long time, but you really dove into RVing. It wasn't just hey, let's travel, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think people have different advice on whether it's a good or a bad thing to make your hobby your job. And you probably have a perspective on this too, because it does change the dynamic of this thing that you were doing for fun and not for profit. But it originally started back in 2014 when we were doing this road trip. We found a sponsor to help us do a documentary called Hourly America, where I worked a job in all 50 states. And when we hit the road, I thought I was going to be like a next Mike Rowe sort of thing, doing dirty jobs. And as it turns out, like no one cared, or I wasn't good enough at that project to get the attention.
No one cares about hourly jobs,
but
that's just like a fact.
But I really loved, and I latched onto the whole RV thing because we were having such a blast. And I just thought that we'd uncovered this really cool thing in 2014 where we were making money a little bit, not much, but we were able to travel and see the country, live inexpensively. We didn't have a mortgage. And I just thought, what a cool way to start our life. So I wanted to tell everybody about it. It was like the first time I wore stretchy jeans for men. And I told all my buddies and they said, let's like, anyway, and I got made fun of. But
then they all bought stretchy jeans.
Then they did. Yes.
And then everyone started asking you questions about RV life.
Yeah. And so I think it just came from, this was so much fun and we're enjoying it a lot. And we want to tell other people about it. Mm-hmm. And then from there, it just kind of like one thing layered on top of the next.
And now there are lots of people telling everybody about RVing. There aren't a lot of people.
No.
There aren't a lot of people talking about RVing around the world. So you guys have spent a significant amount of time traveling around the world now, and not by yourselves, with two small children.
Isn't that everyone's dream, to be in a small space with their kids? I think for us, it was kind of, in part at least, like doing what you know and what you feel comfortable with. Our first international foray was in New Zealand in 2018. And New Zealand is a country that is, if there was any country in the world, I think, that was built for RVing, it's New Zealand. Like you pull into towns and it says camper van parking this way. And it's one big national park. And so when we did that, we did it for almost 2 months and we loved it. And we thought, this is so cool. It's such a great way to explore. And anytime we go to cities, it's fun. Like when we go to like Rome or something, like they're neat cities, but we find a lot of joy in not having tons of plans and just kind of going into some of the back roads and smaller towns. And so most people don't think of Europe as a place, like when you think of traveling Europe, you think of like hopping off trains and things like that. But we like having our own bed and, going to still do the pretty stuff in these different countries. So it's kind of just been something we've continued to do as we've traveled around different parts of the world.
I think it's like a quiet way to travel too. Like you think of like tourists and hustle and bustle and stuff whenever you think of traveling to so many places. But for us, especially with the kids, we can travel as slowly as we want to and always have our own space and always be able to escape to somewhere quiet-ish, as quiet as it can be with a 2-year-old.
So you chose New Zealand first. Did you make that choice because you had heard it was very RV friendly, as I have?
Yeah, New Zealand has an amazing reputation for camping. And we'd seen a couple of people that we knew who had been to New Zealand and camped, like done the minivan camping. But we really wanted to experience it. We really wanted to RV in Europe too. But we were a little bit intimidated by needing to know like 5 different languages for all the different countries that we had wanted to RV to. So we're like, New Zealand, good first time to leave the country.
Yeah. You know the language already, and you get an idea of. So what were some of the surprises to you the first time you left the country to rent an RV? So I assume you're renting an RV in advance. You're figuring that process out before you get down there, I would imagine. But how is it different than, let's just starting with New Zealand, because I'm sure it's different everywhere. But how was it different that first time than what you would experience here in the U.S.?
I think one of the first things that came to mind for me was, you think of America as being such an industrial, innovative powerhouse. But when it comes to a lot of categories, we're actually lagging behind, and like things like design and aesthetics. So when we got to New Zealand and they had imported these Berstner products from Germany, I believe is where they're manufactured.
Yes.
You get inside and you're like, oh my God, this thing is beautiful. And it's just like really well designed. And
they have internet built in, and you have internet everywhere you go before Starlink existed.
Yeah, this was 6 years ago. So
wow.
I think that was kind of the first high level thing. There's a lot of stuff that's pretty standardized now, though. I mean, I think most Class B plus, C minus. I don't know how you call them. RVs are basically the same. In like that's kind of like the standard rig setup in a lot of different countries where you've got like a rear twin bed or a rear lounge option. It's like 24 foot, and that's considered a bigger rig in Europe.
Or New Zealand or anywhere.
Yeah, but they're kind of like, that's like the standard deal that you get in a lot of spots where you've got the cassette toilet, which we never really used, and I'm still not a huge fan of because I feel like I need a shower after. But it's kind of like the standard setup. But those are some of the things for me that kind of came off. And
yeah, we thought after going from our 33-foot Winnebago to New Zealand to this like 23-foot, like 7.5 meter Class C, that we were like really in a small rig, and we pulled into this one campground. They're like, how big is your rig? And we're like, oh, it's really small. And they looked out the window and they're like, that is huge, which is like, that's one of the smallest rigs you can like buy manufactured in the States. But any other place that we've been, the small ones here in the States are the largest size that you see abroad, which is really fun when you try to throw 4 people in there. But the rigs themselves, yeah, are definitely very different. I think, too, talking about the differences with New Zealand especially, you can freedom camp, or what we would call boondocking in the States, in so many more places than you could find here. It's endless. It's amazing.
What is the process, though, for figuring out that stuff when you're going to a new place for the first time, for like knowing what camping is gonna be like there, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, what the driving laws are gonna be, all that sort of stuff? How do you get in the mindset of figuring all that stuff out?
First, you find the right app. I think for us, like, we rented from Wilderness Motorhomes. We've done New Zealand twice. We rented from the same company twice. And what we really loved about them versus other renters is how many of those resources they give you during like their onboarding emails. So they send you like, hey, you have to have the Campermate app. This is going to tell you all of these things. Like, here's the top 10, like, which is maybe the equivalent of KOA in the States. Like, this is the membership to get because they're going to get you discounts on all of these things. And here's sample itineraries and routes. And here's must know things about Kiwi culture and things like that. And so to be able to find a rental company that does that was huge for us for that first country. And I don't think we've really found that in any other rental company we've used in other countries, but they had all of the resources kind of laid out for us to take the guesswork out of it.
Yeah, basically a lot of countries have their own mini camping ecosystems with their own apps and kind of like.
I don't know about by countries, because like Europe is pretty holistic.
Sure. But like in New Zealand, Campermate is a big one that we use for, it's like Campendium, or like Campendium was for like finding camping and things like that. In Europe, Park for Night and Search for Sites, those are big apps that you can use to find free campsites wherever you go, but also like day parking in cities that show things like linked. So you kind of get to know the landscape of the app ecosystem, if you will, for each spot. And that's pretty helpful.
They did not have that in Japan.
Yeah, Japan is the Wild West of RVing, but it also made it so much more fun because we stuck out like sore thumbs, but it was also somewhere that we want to go back to because we loved it so much.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned like in New Zealand, essentially you're using European RVs. What's it like in Japan? Is it the same sort of deal, or do they have a totally different type?
So different. Firstly, like camping culture there is much more tent focused. And I'm talking like Harry Potter Quidditch World Cup, these giant tents where you're like, they've got a fire in there for sure because you see the smoke coming out of the top. You know they've got like a couch or some sort of like cool lounge set up. We never went in anybody's. But
Can I come in your tent, sir?
We were one of like maybe 10 actual vehicle campers that we saw through our whole time in Japan.
Wow.
If that many. But talking to some of the locals there, it was kind of explained to us that it's very similar culturally to America, or how America maybe used to be. It was the dream to then retire and then get your camper and drive around the country and camp. But what we mostly saw was younger families tent camping. But the campers themselves, They're very hard to explain. So ours, one, they're not going to have a bathroom. None of them are going to have a bathroom on board. None of them are going to have a shower on board. Ours could sleep like 6 people, and it was about 16 feet long.
Wow.
An American minivan, for reference, is 17 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Shorter than a minivan. It had bunks, rear bunks, and then like a bathroom area where you could pee in a bag as like an option if you really need to go to the bathroom. A very small little kitchen setup with a sink that had like jugs of water under it for like your dirty water and your clean water that would just cycle in and out. And then a dinette that would go down into a bed, and then an overcab bed, which that overcab bed was at least king size. All 4 of us ended up actually sleeping up there.
Wow.
And cuddling up. The bunk beds were not very comfortable themselves. We used those to store our suitcases, but it was one of the most unique rigs, but it actually worked out really, really well. If the bathroom had been like a wet bath or operational, I think we could have RV'd in that for a lot longer.
maybe you with the kids, but I'm just kidding.
I should have asked you at the beginning to list here. What countries have you all been to at this point now?
Okay.
By RV.
Yes.
Yeah. New Zealand, Japan, the UK, Spain, Andorra, France, Monaco, Italy, Switzerland, America, Canada. There's got to be one more. Oh, I think because we counted England and Wales instead of just the United Kingdom.
Gotcha.
We're hoping to go to Scotland in August. Really start knocking off all the UK, the whole kingdom.
So talk to me about Europe a bit, because I've never been to Europe, and I know it's not that hard to travel around Europe if you're doing it by train or hopping flights or whatever. But in terms of taking a vehicle from country to country, is there anything weird about that?
So if you imagine the process, have you went up to Canada from the US and crossed the border? You know how they like come in and like with dogs basically, and like they're really
check your rig.
Yeah, it's the complete opposite of that. Basically,
it's a smiling person just waving as you cross into Switzerland or France or wherever.
Half the time there's not even a person. I feel like I'm breaking a rule. So that was like a thing.
One border, the guy didn't even look up. He was just like riding, and he was just like get out of here. Like, don't make me do anything.
So there's actually like no process of crossing borders at all.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really cool. I mean, I get it. It's similar to like crossing from state to state here, but it just seems so strange.
It
so
totally does, yeah.
Are there differences then in like driving laws and stuff like that?
More so driving customs than laws. Like if you're in Italy and there's lines in the road that separate all the lanes, Italians don't see those lines. They just they go wherever they want and they go as fast as they want. And then, in France, it'll be everyone will stay in their lane and drive normally. So there's like a little cultural things, but generally like you're going to see the posted speed limits. You're going to see signs that are pictures and not words for like slow down or speed bumps or curve in the road ahead that anyone will understand no matter what language, no matter what language you speak. What other driving customs can you think of?
My mind just went to like which countries were the best and worst to drive in based on the people and the road.
Yeah.
What's the worst to drive in? Wales, obviously.
Wales was by far the most challenging country to drive in because the roads are golf cart paths that are 3-way roads, like 3-lane roads that they're trying to market themselves as. And you can't even pass by like a duck on the road because it's so small. Japan, on the other hand, like we ended up getting derailed into downtown Tokyo in the RV as soon as we picked it up, which is the largest city in the world, 40 million people. The Japanese are so friendly. Like it like nobody honked at me the whole time. Like half the other countries I go through, people are like flipping me off because I cut them off at a roundabout. Like, sorry.
No, you cut off multiple people in roundabouts in England. And you know what? They were still so nice. They were just like, why did you do that to me? Instead of flipping you off. That's more American, maybe.
So,
more French.
Yeah, it's funny to see all the little nuances with each country and like driving customs and things like that, for sure.
Yeah, other than driving on the opposite side of the road in New Zealand and Japan and the UK, like it's so similar to driving in the States, and everything is very clearly marked.
Yeah, and I think you guys, did y'all use Harvest Host quite a bit when y'all were traveling in the US?
Yeah.
Or as you travel in the US, either one. But it's in Europe, there is a similar program, but there's like a larger conglomerate group of them. And then there's programs for each country that you can join, which is one of our favorite things to do in Europe as well. So like when we're in Italy, we'll do it. We'll go to like these vineyards and camp or olive orchard. And last summer we went and did a program called Brit Stops, which is part of Harvest Host now because they bought it. And you camp at pubs. So literally like from like several weeks last summer, we camped, I think it was 27 pubs in like a couple weeks or something. Like I was rolling on the ground because of all the fish and chips, but it was such a fun way in the way that we like to travel because we could roll up to a pub in the evening, and a lot of times they're in the country. So these really small areas, and we just kind of get to sit and hang out and visit with locals and talk and be in this pub that's 500 years old. And it was a really cool experience. So those are some of the things that like you can be spontaneous about that we like versus like we've also traveled Europe via Airbnb and done the trains. So like we've had that typical European experience. But we really like the path of being able to just road trip around and go to these small towns and like stumble upon things that we didn't know were even there because we're bad at researching, you know?
Are you going to places sometimes then because you're doing travel in a different way than most folks are doing when they're heading overseas? Are you finding places that they generally don't see a lot of travelers?
Yes, like
absolutely.
Last summer we did something. On Google we found we were trying to figure out what we want to do in Wales. I had one thing I wanted to do, which was go to the Wrexham Stadium because I've been following the Ryan Reynolds documentary of them buying the soccer team in Wales. And we, other than that and going to pubs, we really had no idea. So Alyssa found something called the 7 Wonders of Wales. And so we're going to like check off all these things thinking this is a big deal. And the people we met at these pubs were like, never heard of the 7 Wonders.
These Welshmen.
We have no idea what you're talking about. So I think that, yeah, totally. I think that's the case in the US though, is like, you're never a tourist in your own backyard sort of thing. And you have people that will come there and do something and it seems remarkable and cool for them. But for you, because it's nearby and everything's nearby in Wales because it's tiny, you just don't think to go.
Yeah. But we did do like the touristy stuff too, like drive to Stonehenge. But most of the things that we did, particularly in Wales, we would meet people and they'd be like, oh, why are you here? Like, that's so weird that like you would come from America to my town. But
I think the core kind of hypothesis around like why, or the reason why we love it a lot is like when you think about the states you've spent a lot of time in, you know, you wouldn't say, oh, I've been to Austin, so I've seen all of Texas, or I've been to New York City, so I've seen all of New York. There's the Finger Lakes, and then there's all these different places like state parks that there's other things that represent that geographic region more than just the main city. But when people go to Europe, they go to Paris and they're like, oh, I've been to France. No, you haven't. Like, you've been to Paris. Anyway, so it's semantics, but, you know, because we have the luxury of being able to spend a little bit more time in these places, you know, you get to see a lot more representation than just what's in one city. And so that's something
a lot more culture.
Yeah,
right.
We've really enjoyed that.
You talked a bit about the Harvest Host style types of arrangements, but I'm sure this can vary around the world dramatically, but give me an idea of cost in some of these places. And are there certain countries that are like much cheaper than others? Obviously, airfare is going to be a whole thing and all that. But,
sure.
But compared to like going to visit some of these countries, the typical tourist fashion, staying in hotels and all that, what's the cost comparison like?
It's probably off the top of my head comparable. Like I don't think you're really going to save unless you go with kind of like a dirt cheap van. I want to say we did the cost for our 30-day trip to Italy a couple years ago, and it was about $7,000 for the month.
Oh, for the whole thing?
Yeah.
I was going to say a rental is probably between like 100 and 150 a night, depending on how nice your rental is and your dates and everything. Campgrounds themselves across Europe are going to be $35 or less, which is probably what it was in the States maybe 10 years ago. They've gotten so much more expensive now. I don't remember. I think it was actually very comparable to that in Japan, but I think New Zealand was a little bit more for the cost of campgrounds. In general, New Zealand is a much more expensive country to visit. But when you're talking about experiences and eating out and food and things like that, Heath and I sat inside of a castle in France and had a 3-course meal, and it was 16 euros each. Like,
Wow.
That's not something you're going to find in the States anywhere, I don't think. And that meal was fantastic, and we think about it all the time.
Give me some other ideas of experiences like that the things that have surprised you as you've traveled around the world.
I have one that comes to mind.
Okay.
So in Japan, we were nervous because it was we like to take a lot of these trips when we can convince friends to go with us. So our friends John and Peter from RV Geeks, like we did a lot of our early trips with them, which was great because the first time we got to Italy, I had never driven a manual before. So I learned for 10 minutes in like a Venetian parking lot. And then we immediately drove into the northern part of Italy, which is the Dolomite Mountains, which are like the Rockies of Italy, essentially. And I stall out and like, I don't know what I'm doing and it's stressful. And there's a crying baby in the backseat. So I'm like, what am I? Anyway, so it was nice to have friends, but Japan was a push of the comfort zone for us because we had friends that were going to go and they couldn't. So we were like, you know what? We want to go bad enough. We're just going to go by ourselves and we'll figure it out. But the language barrier felt like heavier, I guess. And just like we'd never been to Asia before. So it was a push of the comfort zone. So we booked all of the campsites in advance.
That was a requirement. That's the only country you've ever been to where you could not just show up. They all said reservations required.
Right. But one of the places that Alyssa found, which she did awesome, it was like she was like, it's showing up on Google as a campground, but it looks like a cafe. We're really not sure what it is, but we booked it anyway. And we show up and it's this family owned like cafe and their house is there too. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing else really around. And we go to the back and there's this huge playground, which already is a, Hilton style resort for the kids because there's a playground. So we're already winning, but it ended up just being like, they make their own, they grow their own shiitake mushrooms there on site. They have this bamboo that the husband will cut down. He was like a pro surfer at one point. And, they just took such sweet care of us while we were there. And I was sitting in the RV hanging out after we had our lunch meal, and then we were going to go have our dinner meal with them. And he comes and knocks on their door and he said, I'm going to go cut bamboo. Come with me. Like he didn't even ask. He just said come cut bamboo with me. So we went and cut it. And he taught me how to cut the bamboo stalks down. And then we cooked it by a fire. And he was throw this seasoning in there. And we were just sitting hanging out. And I was like, this is so cool. Like what a neat experience. It's not the standard, I'm in Tokyo, going to sing karaoke, which we also did and was fun. It just felt like such a wonderful experience that we wouldn't have had we not kind of gotten off the main beaten path. And in that same regard, we went to this small town called Wasaga, which is this really old for generations. They've been doing green tea plantations and growing there. And so we got to go spend a day, trying all these types of different matcha and getting a tour of these farms in this rural area that, was much easier to access because we had a vehicle. So those are simple experiences that come to mind for me. And in Europe, I feel like there's a lot, but those are some of the more recent ones just from last year when we did Japan.
Yeah. I think one of the small, delightful things is that for every other country you've been to, we've never had to pay to go to a national park. They're all free and you just drive on in, and they don't have, big visitor centers, or maybe they don't have all the clearly marked hikes and maps and all that stuff that you get here in the States. But it's really interesting to see these countries that are so much older than our country.
Mhm.
And you drive into the national park and maybe there's a little sign saying, you know, you're in Yoshino National Park or the Pyrenees National Park. And then there's just this tiny picturesque village that, you know, has been there for hundreds of years more than the actual national park, because these national parks were started like 50 years ago. And then you're just in this like beautiful wilderness. And that's been a really different thing for us versus we go to Yellowstone and it feels like you're going to a theme park with everything going on. And then you go to these other places that feel so raw and natural and like actually like a nature preserve maybe is a better description than even just a national park.
Yeah. I feel like I'm listening to us in the back of my mind thinking if someone like just hit the road in an RV in the US.
America's great.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's not even posing one versus the other in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we crossed a lot of the things off we were most excited about doing. And eventually I think we'll do lap number 2 in the US and, you know, start taking our kids to more of the national parks that were most meaningful to us. There's just a lot of other spots that we've been excited to explore too. So if you haven't done a lot of the US, like go do the places that you want. But yeah, there's also cool spots outside of here as well.
So you mentioned that I think that Scotland is sort of next on the list. You on the website, I noticed you have an article, heathandalyssa.com, by the way. You have an article that lists all the different countries that you can RV in. Where are some of the other places that you're interested in going in the future?
You were going to say Morocco first, aren't you?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, you
But
weren't.
Morocco, I am so, I know it's going to be probably like 3 years at a minimum. I'm so into Africa and the idea of RVing. I really want to RV in Morocco and in Botswana or Namibia, which is just north of South Africa, in case you haven't been studying African maps like I clearly have. But it's so different. It's very much overlanding in a lot of ways. Morocco is a lot like RVing Europe. You can ferry over from Europe and RV around there. But Southern Africa in particular, you can overland and go on all these safaris and things, which I think would be really awesome. But I was going to actually say number 1 on my list right now is Australia.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about Australia. New Zealand's a little too cush. No animals that can kill you. Everyone's really nice. We want to go to the outback where...
No, I don't want to go to that.
Where the 10 deadliest snakes in the world live.
You know, and if the outback doesn't get you, we'll just go for a dip in the ocean and the great whites might. But all kidding aside, Australia, we've been talking a lot about like winter plans and trying to get over there there's a big loop. They call it the Great Loop in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So people will do like a year and they'll take a year off and they'll do like this giant loop around. And so that's been something that seems like it seems like a really fun adventure.
Yeah.
So we mentioned New Zealand as a great starter country because of their RVing infrastructure. For folks that are interested in getting into international RV travel for the first time, what are some of the other countries that you suggest to sort of get your feet wet?
Highly recommend France.
I was going to say France too.
France is very close second to New Zealand as far as infrastructure for camping. All of their gas stations, which are going to be called airs, are very much like the nicest of the flying J's that you see. They're going to have dump stations. They're going to have water fills. They're going to have picnic areas. A lot of them have playgrounds. They're also going to have a Starbucks because that's a worldwide phenomenon. But they have all these things for RVing specifically. And so you can boondock in all these places and then still get all of the services and things that you need and still find places to park and everything like that. Like those little things that can be so stressful when you're in a large vehicle or in an unknown place, they really take care of a lot of it for you. And like the fact that there is this great app in Park for Night that tells you where is the nearest dump station, where's the nearest water fill, where's the nearest campgrounds or free camping and things like that. It's so convenient. And then you're just immersed in this history and you're surrounded by all this culture and castles and amazing wineries. We did what's it called in France? France Passion. So we've camped at all of these wineries for free. And then we go and buy this wine. And she's like, yeah, my great grandfather started this vineyard back in 1803 or something. And I'm like, mind blown at this history that these people have coming from America for sure. But that for me is probably the one country that has surprised me the most as far as if you really want to dip your toe in an international RVing. And Europe is such a big destination for so many Americans and much closer than New Zealand when you're talking about flight time. That's a really, really great one.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would layer onto that, as far as if you are thinking you may want to do a trip in Europe, we've booked twice. We haven't gotten paid or sponsored by them at all, but we've been big fans and paid their full price or whatever. They're called Anywhere Campers, and they can do one-way rentals. So you can instead of having to if you only have a month or 3 weeks to do like a big road trip, you can go from point A to point B and not have to circle back. And so they'll fly anywhere to drop off your RV, do the orientation, make sure you feel comfortable, and then they'll fly to wherever it ends and pick it up, and all the miles are included.
Ooh, nice.
And so we've rented from them twice, and
we've met Dimitri. He's always been the person for us. Over the years that we've done this, we've met him in Venice and Rome and Paris and Barcelona, all over as we've picked up and returned in different places. And it's really nice.
And if anything has went wrong, they've always been really quick to fix it. They have a ton of really nice reviews. That would be a concern for me if I'm taking an RV trip in a foreign country, is something inevitably goes wrong. Mm-hmm. And so there's big marketplaces that you can book through, similar to Outdoorsy or whatever, which we haven't went that path because we just hadn't heard great things. And you just probably varied. Some people may provide great service, some people might not provide any. So we've kind of went a middle of the road with international bookings, where we just really source by who has the most 5-star reviews on Google, because they're probably providing good service. And that way, when anything goes wrong, and it inevitably does, they take care of it.
Yeah.
If people want to know more about traveling internationally in an RV, I think probably the best spot is your blog. Yeah, you've got tons and tons of blog posts about all sorts of different aspects of RVing internationally.
Yep. And we have a bunch of videos on our YouTube channel as well, showing off more of the, if you've got, and I found this is true in a lot of couples, you've got the person who needs to see the pretty places and be inspired versus the person who just already wants to go anywhere all the time. YouTube is a good spot to be like, hey, look at this castle, babe. Be convinced. Works every time.
And to give Alyssa a plug, she wrote a guide on RVing in France that she hasn't released yet, but she is working on getting it out. So
he's working on getting it out.
I'm supposed to be editing it. But if anybody wants an early copy of that, we can send it to you. If you're watching this, just send us an email and we'll shoot it over to you, and for free. Just, go have fun as a return the favor to us in Europe, RVing around.
And of course, you have your other books as well, like RVing Across America. Find out all the information about Heath and Alyssa over at heathandalyssa.com. I'll put a link to it in the description as well. You do the great thing that I always forget to do, and where your videos are actually tied to a blog post, so you can find all of the information that you need. Thanks so much for being here, guys. It was so great to see you again.
So good to see you, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
RV Miles is sponsored by RVpostings.com, your go-to platform for buying and selling RVs. Explore a wide range of RVs, from small pop-up campers to large diesel pushers. Find the perfect fit for your travel needs. With their user-friendly interface, you can easily navigate through their website for a seamless RV shopping experience. You can get comprehensive information about each RV, including photos, features, details, and pricing, and connect with sellers directly. No middlemen. And if you're selling your RV, you can list it on RVpostings.com and reach a targeted audience of RV buyers, ditching the tire kickers and the repetitive "is this still available" messages. It's a paid but affordable platform for sellers to post RVs for sale, so buyers can be sure that the seller is real and serious about selling. Whether you're buying or selling, RVpostings.com connects RV enthusiasts across the country. Get eyes on your RV with their Facebook buy and sell group with 163
1,000 members. All RVs posted on their website are posted to the group, as well as other sites like Oodle, Class, and American Listed. Whether you're buying or selling, start your journey at rvpostings.com.
Thanks again to Heath and Alyssa for joining us. What a great resource they are. I'll link to all of their social media in the show notes, including their YouTube channel and their website, which is just a wealth of information. And they have lots of books too. Check out their books. They're just great people, really smart with some great resources. It's time to check the level of our tanks, sponsored by Liquefied RV Toilet Treatment, the no BS toilet treatment. Claim your free bottle with purchase over at liquefiedrv.com, or you can also find Liquefied Toilet Treatment on amazon.com. We'll put a link in the description for both. My black tank this week is ants. There are pests that are involved with camping, and ants are usually not that bad, but they can be one of the worst ones when they get into your rig and start attacking things. And we have been pretty lucky with ants over the years. But in storage this spring, we got ants. And we tried very hard to get rid of them. We tried hard to figure out where they're coming in and plug up those holes, and then they move to another one. The only thing that we've ever found that really works really well with ants is the bait traps that then they take the poison back to the den and whatever. Then you're dealing with cleaning up a lot of dead ants, which is what we did. So we had ants this spring. Luckily, now we're on the road and we're away from the ant hill, so we don't have the ants anymore. But that was one of the pains in getting the rig ready for these travels. We didn't have the ants when we went on our trip in May, but in between May and now, got ants. So we had to deal with those, and we got rid of them. But here's something cool about ants. We're going to spin this into a little bit of a gray tank, if you will. I heard this story the other morning on the radio about some new research about ants, about carpenter ants in particular. And it turns out that carpenter ants are the only other species on Earth besides humans that perform amputations. So if a carpenter ant has a broken leg above the elbow, it will present that leg to, I guess you'd call it the knee, not the elbow, whatever you call it. It's an ant. I don't know. They'll present that leg to another ant, and that other ant will come gnaw it off and then lick the wound, which helps kill any sort of infection that might occur. And this is a way an ant survives. Otherwise, infection will take it over. And it only works if it's above the joint, above the knee. If the break is below that joint, the other carpenter ant won't gnaw it off. And I just thought this was so crazy because, we tend to think of small species in particular with very, very small brains as not so smart, but we're constantly surprised by some of the amazing different instincts that species have. And the fact that carpenter ants are the only other species that we know of on Earth that will perform amputations to save another member of the species, I thought was a really, really cool thing. I'll link to an article that describes this research in the show notes. I think it's really, really cool. My fresh tank this week is the folks at Power Watchdog, at Hughes, which produced the Power Watchdog, I guess. We've been big fans of the Power Watchdog for a very long time. So what it is a smart surge protector. People call them EMSs. EMS is kind of a trade name by one of their competitors. But a smart surge protector, as opposed to a standard surge protector, does some extra things that are really protective of the electrical system in your RV. So a surge protector cannibalizes itself when lightning hits or there's a power surge in the campground, protecting your sensitive electronics in your RV, not just the microwave and stuff that's part of your RV, but anything you have plugged into your RV. So your cell phone or your laptop, whatever it might be. So Smart Surge Protector takes that a step further, and it doesn't just deal with power surges, but it deals with other things like low and high voltage. So the Hughes Power Watchdog, what it'll do if the voltage is high in the campground, it will shut off automatically. If it's low in the campground, it'll shut off automatically. If you go over the watts that you're supposed to be running in your rig, it will shut off automatically. And then you can go into the app and deal with that. So if you accidentally use your microwave, your air conditioner, and your iron at the same time in a 30 amp rig, and you trip the breaker, you don't actually have to go out to flip the breaker on the power pedestal. The Watchdog trips before that. So you can be in your underwear and you can go on the app and you can turn it back on. So we've loved the Watchdog for a long time because of that, and because it has a replaceable surge module. So if it does get fried because of lightning or something like that, it self-sacrifices. You just have to spend like $30 on the part, when other brands, you have to replace the whole thing at like $200 or more. Hughes has come out with version 2 of the Power Watchdog. So they've updated it. I haven't got my hands on one yet, but I've seen it, and it looks really great. It's very similar to what exists now, but now where you plug the power cord to your RV in is actually an enclosed door that can lock. So it's weather protected, and you can lock it to provide a little bit more security. And it's going to keep it, dust proof and all that sort of stuff. I think that's a really big upgrade. You can now adjust the lighting on it. There's one of the biggest complaints about the Watchdog is it has this big bulldog on the front that lights up to tell you that everything's good. It lights up white to tell you everything's good, and it lights up red to tell you there's a problem. When it's lit up white, it can be fairly bright in the campground, especially if you've got it by a window or something like that. Well, now you can adjust the lighting on it, which is a cool upgrade. But the biggest upgrade is that it has Wi-Fi now. So before it had Bluetooth, and very good Bluetooth. Like it always connects to my phone immediately, as opposed to like some smart speakers and stuff out there where it's like, why isn't this connecting? I got to go delete it and re-add it and stuff like that. The Bluetooth on the Power Watchdog has been phenomenal for me. And it's a good distance. I've never had an issue inside the rig being able to go on the app and see what kind of power I'm pulling and all that sort of stuff. But now with built-in Wi-Fi, you can also connect it to a wireless network. And what that does is it allows you to control it from anywhere on Earth, as long as you have a Wi-Fi connection on the other end. So say you've left your pets behind in your RV and you went out to a restaurant. You can get a notification that the power has shut off in your RV. If you have friends staying in your RV and they're having an issue, you can go on and see what the problem is. If you have it plugged in at a seasonal site and you're back home, you can go check on it to make sure the power is running when a storm blows through, to make sure everything doesn't go bad in your fridge, all that sort of stuff. So I think this is a really great upgrade. So we'll put a link to the Hughes Power Watchdog in the description. The only difference with the new one is that they do not have a hardwired model for the new version yet. If you need the hardwired version, you're going to go with the old one. I have tried both, and the hardwired can be nice. I will say it's a pain for boondocking because you have to trick it so that it knows that the generator is a safe device. But also, what's nice about having the portable version is, when you're at a sketchy sort of pick your own site, national forest campground or something like that, and you really don't know about the quality of the power at those sites, you can actually just take it and plug it into the campsite before you even back your rig up into the campsite and make sure that the power is okay. And we've been burned by that a few times. So that's really convenient. And I think people are worried about theft a little bit with the portable version, and that's understandable, but they do have an integrated sort of lock mount, so you can lock it with like a bike cable lock. So I'm a big fan of the Watchdog, always have been. And if you don't have a smart surge protector, you should absolutely get one. That's it for this week's episode of the RV Miles podcast. I hope you got something out of this. I hope you're having a great time listening to RV Miles. If you are, please leave us a rating and a review anywhere that allows you to do that. Leave a comment on the YouTube version of this episode. Share it with friends who are interested in traveling in an RV internationally. Share it in Facebook groups. We'd love it if you'd do that. Thanks a lot for being here, everybody, and keep logging those RV miles. Bye-bye.